to another edition of Access Central TV. I'm Andy Hersman, and today we have Dr. Marcelo Silva, and we also have Jonathan Buchanan here. So I'm going to actually hand it over to Marcelo here, and because we're going to talk about relationships. So you kind of set it up for us, please.
Okay. I've been doing relationship classes since 1997 when I started my institute, the Human Nature and Tomorrow Society Institute. I led discussion groups, I've done lectures, and it's mainly in relationships. And I'm specialized in family systems and family dynamics. So people, they look at today's relationships and they feel there's something lacking. So I start with the thing called the cauldron of negativity. And it starts basically the ingredients that make that cauldron. So we talk about trust. There's hardly any trust between any two individuals. Doesn't matter if it's husband and wife, family members, co-workers, and so on. So that's one thing. Immediate gratification. You know, people want things yesterday, which ties in with that as well, which is the work ethic. There's no work ethic between, you know, not just in a job or a career, but in essence that it takes work to build any kind of relationship nowadays. Also, people are extremely superficial, extremely narcissistic, extremely materialistic. They're spiritually bankrupted. So these are the things that comprise of the cauldron of negativity. Now, you work within a system, a society that's overstressed, overworked, underappreciated, you know, frustrated, depressed, angry, and they're in a mode of survivability, you know, and at the same time, they're coping. Their number one and two coping mechanisms is denial and avoidance. This is what you have. And then to add on top of it, you use technology, which is the lectures that I've done as well. The more technologically connected we are, the more disconnected we become. We see this with how people interact. They're losing their social skills. People don't know how to talk to each other anymore. And how do you think that's going to affect a relationship between one individual to another individual? And you know, so I just want to basically just kind of start with that. You know, I remember growing up as a kid watching G.I. Joe, and they used to always have the message at the end, knowing is half the battle. So if you don't know what's going on and what's happening, all of us are going to be part of the problem and not part of the solution. So that's what I want to start off with.
Interesting. Well, that was a big mouthful. There's a lot there. I think the trust issue, I found that very interesting because do you think that has changed throughout the years or the decades as far as, because divorce rates have skyrocketed, and you know, what is the reason for that? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, for so many years I had heard, you know, the divorce rate is up to 50%. So I said, well, I'm a psychologist, so I do statistics and stuff like that. So I said, let me conduct my own study, which I did. Was back in 2000, and I did a survey, a random survey, and with various different couples, and the conclusion that I came up with, that basically taking into consideration people that are not actually technically been divorced, but they've been separated long enough that you can consider them to be divorced, it came out to about 39 to 42%. With standard deviation one way or the other. That's what it came out to. Now, so let's just say for argument's sake, 4 out of 10 couples have already, you know, cut their losses and moved on. They got divorced. So now there's another 6 that, you know, there's another 5 that have now been divorced as well. And there's usually 10% or a little bit less that are still married. I mean, they have been divorced, but they've been, you know, they're still together, but they should not be together. So the ones that I realize that stay together, they're staying together because they know what they have, they don't know what what's gonna be out there. Another percentage are staying together because of the kids. Now it could go one way or the other. You know, it's a commendable thing because at least they have something in common, and they realize, you know, we brought these kids into the world, so let's work around that. But sometimes in situations it's worse off because now they're using the kids, and the kids are witnessing all this animosity and everything else. So in some cases, with some of my clients, I've said, you know what, probably better off if you guys do separate because it's causing too much damage for the kids. Others, I call it the, these usually happens with the upper middle class and the upper class. It was basically kind of a financial merger why they got married. And I grew up in the North Shore, I grew up in Port Washington, so I've seen those kind of situations where families kind of like, you know, kind of want their kids to marry within certain type of, you know, caliber or fluency or whatever that may be. Mm-hmm. So in those situations where they should have gotten divorced, they don't get divorced because they feel like, you know, both their attorneys will take most of what do they have. So they just kind of continue having a relationship. They may have their affairs and so on, and they do their own thing, but they stay together for that reason. So, you know, their financial wealth.
So it's more of a business relationship.
Yes, it's more of a business relationship, exactly. Others stay together because, you know, it's familiar to them. They know nothing else. So basically that's what it comes down to. So you get the percentage that I really focused on afterwards were the ones that stay together. And let me just say this, it's not that like they didn't have any crossroads, not that they didn't have any challenges. As a matter of fact, because of their challenges, they became stronger. Had situations where sometimes we had couples where they lost a kid to a death. Sometimes it's really hard for couples to, you know, survive that, you know, but they did. Or a situation which is more common, infidelity. Husband cheated and so on. They worked on it and they moved on. And one thing that most of them said in common is like, you know what, the foundation that we had was always strong. We definitely had our challenges, it was very difficult and so on, but building on that is what made us last as long. So I look at it, I'm a poker player, and I'm thinking, if I'm about to go all in, and somebody tells me you have a 90% chance of losing, I'm not gambling with that. I'm going to fold my cards. So if there's a chance that, like, you know, 1 out of every 10 couples out there have a chance of being in a situation where it's a marriage or a relationship that's going to be lasting and be strong, it makes me wonder why would people get married anyway, especially in today's day and age.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, actually. I mean, nowadays, wouldn't it be a better thing for people to just forget marriage altogether? And because you could do almost pretty much anything. You could live together, you can have kids together, you can buy a house together. You know, marriage is really what it's come down to now is just a contract, a business contract.
But I disagree with that. Marriage, it represents a symbol that you sort of are one. We're together, we have a family together, we live under a roof together, we raise our family, we're one sort of entity. We took 2 separate lives, we've become one.
Sure, but you can do that without physically getting married. I mean,
not really, because
because
if the husband or the wife dies, their spouse can inherit their home tax-free, and that does make a big difference. Stability is very important. I mean, part of success in a relationship, I believe, is being married and being stable. But I think there's other things too that can lead to an unsuccessful relationship. You have to have things in common. And I think there has to be a similar IQ as well. And the reason why I'm saying this, I was listening to a Bloomberg interview where the founder of Match.com basically said that, you know, his father was like a rocket scientist, a genius, and his mother liked to do sort of gardening and cooking and baking, and they really had nothing in common. And, you know, the son who created Match.com spent a lot of time with his father, and they'd go to museums and they'd do things, and he'd bond a lot with his son because his son picked up a lot of the things that the father had in common. And he would always indicate where they'd be sitting down having dinner, and he would never see his parents talk because they had nothing really in common. But this was in the 40s and the 50s, so you got married and you just stayed together. He's saying at this point in life, you have to marry on your IQ. If you're probably someone who is very smart and you like science and you like math and you're into those things, you should probably try to find a woman who likes those similar things. It's a lot easier to build a relationship with somebody when you have those similarities.
Well, what if someone's just looking for a sexual relationship and?
Well, that's an issue. I mean, then you're talking about a physical attraction.
Right.
At some
That's what
point,
I'm
like
saying.
anything, you get tired of that person and you want to move on. But you don't know if the other person, maybe that person wants to have a serious relationship. If that's what you're looking for, then you should probably try to find someone who's just looking to be what they call friends with benefits type setup. But if you're someone who's thinking about, I want to get married, I want to have a family, you have to sort of plan that out. I think at this day and age, people have to think out really carefully the decisions and what they do. And if you want to be married or you want to have a serious relationship at some point in your life, let's say you want to be married by 28, you should probably find somebody who's probably older than you, man or woman, who wants what you want, but would want it at a little later in his life, so that when he gets to that point, you're at your point, and it's a good match. I know many of my friends who've dated for years, and they're around the same age, and then when they hit a certain age, they want to get married, and the guys are like, you know what? No, I don't want to get married. I don't want to get married into my mid to late 30s. If you want to be married at 28, you should have found somebody who wanted to get married at that time. And I see that brings a lot of animosity and a lot of, because you've spent that much time with somebody and nothing came out of it.
Do you think some people get married for the wrong reasons?
Oh, absolutely. I think some. I was sitting in my office one day and I was thinking about, and I call it the plan. And the plan is that everyone has sort of this stage that we all kind of follow. We go to school, we graduate high school. It's expected for us to go to college. Right. We go to college, then you get married, then you have kids. And maybe that plan isn't always acceptable for everybody.
Well, that's the Republican plan.
Okay.
See?
Well, that was most of the plan for a lot of the country, regardless if they were Republican or Democrat. I think now a lot of people have broken that plan where it's, I don't want to go to college, I'll have kids out of wedlock. I mean, I still believe that people should have kids in marriage because that does bring stability and the chances of less poverty. I mean, the fact is, when you have,
just stay together. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing because when you're married, you're committed to that person.
So you're saying that people
legally, you're committed to that person.
I think
you're committed to them through health insurance, through child support.
You can do that.
No, you
can buy insurance for each other. I mean,
but you'd have to pay as a separate individual, which would cost more. If I'm married, I put my wife on my insurance policy with my kids.
You know what
my
costs
kids
more?
could my
A
kids
divorce
could
lawyer.
my kids could be on my policy, but it doesn't mean my girlfriend would be.
I mean,
that could be a problem.
But I don't see a benefit.
But to me, the most important thing is that you shouldn't have kids at a young age, because that's almost going to guarantee a lot of hardship, I think, in relationships as well as life. There's nothing wrong with poor people having children. There's nothing wrong with wealthy people having children. But I just think that when you do it in marriage and it's thought out and it's more organized, there's less
Do you think
problems.
There's an overall kind of an incentive for the government to kind of push the marriage? And so
No, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the government doesn't incentivize marriage at all. If anything, they penalize it. I mean, there's taxes that hurt you when you get married.
If you get married, you have more tax incentives.
Not the first year.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know why the first year, but there's more an incentive. You get benefits of being whatever. But at the same time,
if you have children, you can write off your children,
right?
As dependents, your wife, etc.
Think about it. It's great for the economy, because if you have two people that come together and living together, now they have both incomes coming in, more likely for them to buy a house, right? Than individually, right? It's usually couples that are usually buying a house.
Sure.
Right? Because they're both incomes and so on. And I believe, I thought this out because, look, you buy a house in New York, unless you're basically going to use a house to, as a business investment. You're going to buy the first house, you're not going to plan to live in it and so on, and get others, you're going to live in it for the rest of your life. It's never really a house, because once you finally finish paying off your last mortgage, you're going to have to continue paying, to continue having a house, you're going to have to continue paying taxes.
Well, that's why I believe that when people say I own a home, you don't really own anything. You're just renting it.
Basically,
because the bank owns it, and then once you're done paying back the bank, you still have to pay your property taxes.
For the rest
and if
of
you
your
don't
life.
pay your property taxes, then the
take
government will seize it, and then it'll go to the steps, and somebody can buy it and pay off your back taxes. So you're always renting.
You're right.
Basically.
So I mean, and that's the thing. They want more people to do that.
Basically,
they'll spend more money together and everything else. So I'm saying that's an aspect, but I don't want to belabor that point. Maybe go into considering.
There are a lot of relationships that last. I think you just have to find the right person. You have to have things in common. Most of the marriages, they dissolve due to finances. Either they're not making enough, or someone's spending too much.
But one point that I also wanted to make
that's a problem
which
too.
is it's changed the gender roles, and I believe men and women right now we're going through a transitional period. Why? Because of the feminist movement and the women's movement. The women's movement has only been about 50 years young, right? The way men and women have been interacting with each other has been for thousands and thousands of years. Up until the 50s and the 60s, things were a certain way. You're a woman, you do this. You're a man, you do this. Now things have changed. And one of the major things that women's movement and the feminist movement has done is told women is like, you know what? You could go out there, you could bring home the bacon. You know, and for the men indirectly, it said, you know what, it's okay for you to stay home, maybe Mr. Mom. It's okay for you to be more in touch with your feminine side and everything else. So I think that men and women right now are going through a transitional period, and then you add all those other things that I mentioned beforehand, and you add the technology on top of it as well. It becomes the situation that we're living in at this time. And
see, I go back to the whole IQ. Right now, there are more women in college than there are men.
Probably so,
yes. For a lot of relationships, that could be an issue. If you have a woman making more money, maybe the man
IQ
doesn't like
does not
that.
necessarily equate education.
No, but it does make a difference on if you're a person who's educated, you're more likely to try to find somebody who's sort of on that same level.
I agree with you. You're right.
Regardless of skin color, religion, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. So if you're not at a barrier, if you're not at that level where maybe you want to date that person or have that relationship, and they could be a good match for you, but that education, that one level could be a barrier.
I agree.
That could be hard to break.
It's more than just education. It's more than just having things in common. The things that I mentioned before, those are intricate
trust
is an issue.
Trust should be
Immediate
something.
gratification is an issue.
Well, this is
work ethic is an issue.
I'll give you an example.
There's too many choices out there. If people also expendable, disposable.
I had a relative tell me, and I won't mention her name. I have a relative tell me that, we just randomly talk, and I said, do you think you'll ever marry this guy? And she goes, oh yeah, possibly. And he goes, but he'll want me to sign a prenup. And I said, for what? He doesn't have anything. Well, he just wants me to sign something. And I said, you know what? You're my cousin, but I don't think you should marry the guy. Why would somebody ask you to sign a prenup? You don't have anything to sign. It doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So if he doesn't trust you and he thinks at this point where you're just dating is going to be an issue, then you should question whether or not you want to be with someone like that. You have no assets for them to take, but you still want them to sign a prenup, which is the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. So when I tell women things like that, it's like, if someone says something like that, you should be reevaluating your whole relationship, saying, do I really want to be with someone like this? Or a man, do I want to be with a woman like this who's saying, I should sign a prenup when they don't bring anything to the relationship? You're basically about even as far as economics.
Prenups for each other.
I mean, there's no purpose to sign a prenup when you don't have anything. Generally, most lawyers will say, if you have about $500,000 in assets and you're coming into a relationship. I know someone whose father passed away in 9/11. The kids got quite a bit of money. They bought a home. They went to college. They have a significant amount of money, probably $750,000, $800,000. The daughter got married, and I told the mother, you should have your daughter sign a prenup. She's coming into the marriage with zero debt, college educated, a house, $300,000 in savings. That's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And so if the relationship didn't work out, should her husband be entitled to take half of that? And my answer is no. But
when you tell can't you trust him?
But it's not about trust. But it's that whole thing, trust but verify type of thing. If I'm coming in with something, that's mine. That unfortunately came, that in this particular case it came through through a death like that. What's yours is yours. Now, I will say this: if you are two poor people who worked your butts off and you bought a home together, it didn't matter to me who if it was the husband making more money or the wife, then I think there has to be a division of assets. They have to divide up the assets. Okay, but if you're coming in with money, doesn't mean you don't trust your girlfriend or you don't trust your boyfriend. It's just, what, this is mine, that's yours. Now, I also believe too, whatever you earn while you're together, you may have to split that up. So your $800,000 may be off the table, but now if you've made another $200,000 or $300,000, that could be divided. But that's why you see a lot of wealthy people, they tend to marry other wealthy people.
So what happens if one makes $200,000, $300,000, but the other one doesn't really makes like only $50,000?
To me,
that should be divided evenly.
No, well, to me, you have to look at other things. I mean, you have some women or men who stay home. To me, that's a job. So even though I don't work, I take care of my kids. Doesn't mean I'm not entitled to any assets. You should still receive something. But that's usually the courts. But I know money's a big factor in relationships, and that causes a lot of problems. But when I hear people say things like, well, I want my girlfriend to sign a prenup because I have a Corvette, right off the bat, you need to drop the person.
Well,
you need to get rid of them, because that's going to be a disaster. When I hear the guy say, I want her to sign a prenup, just to sign one, that's a relationship that's doomed to fail, because you don't even trust her to begin with, and you don't even have anything that would justify a prenup.
That's my point. My point is marriage. If they didn't get married, it wouldn't be about money.
But it wouldn't matter anyway, because if you had kids, you would still have to pay child support. These courts are becoming more and more liberal. It seems like the law and the Constitution no longer is relevant. So you never know. You get a judge that says, you know what, community property, even though you're not married, you've been together for 20 years, I'm going to give your spouse a quarter or 10%. There are actually laws like that in this country that still give somebody that you've been living with part of your assets.
Well, common law marriage.
Common law marriage.
We don't have that here.
But this is just one area. Yeah, but it does happen.
Marriage is just unreasonable. It's like, why would you commit your entire rest of your life to anything? Not just another person, to a job, to a house.
But that's how you have stability.
But
if you bounce around to different jobs,
people change.
I think what he's saying, Jonathan, that it's almost unrealistic. Maybe at one point in time, in our society, that was fine. But considering that we're now in the 21st century,
right,
and pretty much a lot of people now, like again, the feminists made a big change within how men and women interact with each other in general, because now women are part of the the economic force. They're actually able, where before, it wasn't even it wasn't even an incentive for them to get educated. They're just going to get educated for the sake of being educated. It wasn't that they're going to be contributing members of the economy. Now women are actually, and we're talking this at an earlier show about the economy. In the 70s, there's an influx of women going into the workforce. And that was just happening, during World War II, because, while the men were out there fighting, the women were in the factory. They took the jobs from the men.
I don't object to women working.
No. I'm not saying that either. I'm saying, but it's something that you have to recognize that now that's a factor and a variable in the interaction between men and women. In situations where I've had men that said, I'm intimidated that my woman makes, 3 times the amount that I do. So, so that is a factor.
Well, we have to find out what caused it to get to that point. Did he not go to college? Did his wife go to college? Did his girlfriend go to college?
No,
because that makes a difference on what you earn.
No, that's just a circumstance.
Is your girlfriend a pharmacist? Is she a doctor?
It's just a circumstance.
That's going to make more. I mean, there's a big difference.
There's a problem also. You have to understand. Back in the 70s, 60s, one person could make enough to run a household.
Exactly.
Right? Now it's mandatory that both people work. Right. So, now you got the pressure of people having to work instead of having the option. Right. Back when women had the option of doing it, fine. It was more freedom. That was great. Right. But when you got the pressure now of 2 people working, Republicans say, "Oh, we're all for family values." How are you going to have family values when you got both people working? Who's going to take care of the kids?
Why do you have to single out Republicans?
Because that's they always talk about.
These family values. But they're trying to protect marriage. If anything, they're trying to keep a stable family.
Oh yeah, by forcing people to work two jobs and not take care of the kids.
If the Democrats have their way with their high taxes, people are going to be working more than 2 jobs.
Well, Jeb Bush, if I'm not mistaken, Jeb Bush just said recently that we as middle class people should be working more hours. Right. He has the goal to say the people, the working class out there that are busting their butts, trying to keep their heads above water, it's your fault. You should be working more hours. So, I mean, this is something.
I have to see that quote before I can comment.
No, you could verify that.
I've seen it.
And people jumped all over him on that.
I don't have a problem with people working, but we also have to take into consideration times have changed dramatically.
Right.
People want to have nice things. They want to have a Mercedes.
You're absolutely right.
They want to have a Cadillac. They want to be part of the country club. A lot of that stuff,
Right.
A lot of those things, all the designer clothes, all of those things.
The main reasons
there's a lot of that keeping up with the Joneses,
right,
which is causing a lot of those relationship problems.
With you. But one of the main reasons that there's an increase in divorces is finances, and that's one of the main causes. And all the things that you just enumerated, you're absolutely right. I have a client that is a doctor. He's making about, he's a surgeon. He's making over $350,000, almost $400,000 a year. His wife is a principal. So between the both of them, making almost $550,000 a year. You wouldn't believe that they're living paycheck to paycheck, would you? But it's exactly what you're talking about. They have a certain type of lifestyle that they got to maintain. They got 3 kids, 2 are in colleges,
right,
so they're paying crazy money for that. Each of the 3 kids, one has a Mercedes, one has got a Beaver, the other one's got a Camry. Is paying for the car insurance and car payments for that. The wife is driving a Rover. He's riding a Benz, and so on. They don't have a yacht, but they have a nice boat. They have a home in the Hamptons, and so on. And he's got malpractice insurance. She spends a lot of money, so that's the reason why they call me into it. So the point is,
they chose that, and I don't have any sympathy for that. They chose that to just have that lifestyle, and whatever stress it brings, that's what comes with it.
No, I hear
So
you.
if they're living paycheck to paycheck, or what I call penny to penny,
but what I'm
they
saying,
chose that.
What
They could have said, you know what, to your kids, you don't need a Mercedes.
Right.
If I'm going to get you a car, what's wrong with a secondhand car?
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we got like a minute left. So I'd like you to just sum up basically what your point is, what the goal is, and what the future holds. What do you think?
Well, I think one thing that people have to realize that, again, and I say it again, men and women are going through a transitional period. And if you add all those things that I talked about as far as the technology and all the ingredients that makes a negative cauldron, trust, people becoming expendable, disposable, no work ethic, meaning you have to work at a relationship, and recognize all these different things that are affecting all of us. Unless we recognize that first and we just keep going on a day-to-day basis, things are just going to continue getting worse.
I got you. Well, thanks both of you, and if anybody else at home has an idea about the topic, call us at 631-440-6012. Leave a message on the machine, and we will address what you have to say. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. Thanks so much. Please tune in again next week. And this is Access Central TV. Have a good evening.
Access Central TV.